An iconic racetrack with some iconic winners. It's time to kick off the 2019 version of the Brickyard 400 with Monster Energy Cup Series practice here on a beautiful day in Indianapolis. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Indianapolis, and glad to join you here. Marty Snyder, Jeff Burton, Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Jr. There are some racetracks where you drive through the tunnel and the place just feels like you're somewhere important. Is this one of those places for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've always felt like Daytona was kind of the cornerstone of the foundation of NASCAR. This is the cornerstone of the foundation of all American motorsports. Indianapolis has such amazing history, not only with stock car racing, but obviously with IndyCar.
Yeah.
But even beyond that, before the First World War, they were here trying to race cars, racing the first automobiles in organized racing.
Yeah, you know what I find fascinating every time I come here is that when we go to Daytona, we go to Darlington, NASCAR created the history. Here we're guests. Here we're coming in and we're the guest of people that have done way more at this racetrack than we have. And it's just a feeling like no other. But, I think this weekend we're going to start writing new history. I think that with this new rules package, I think a new kind of racing, NASCAR racing, is going to come to the Brickyard, and I think it's going to start a new history, and it's going to be a really, really good history.
Well, so not only is it a crown jewel event this weekend, but it's also the final race of the regular season. And check that out, Jeff. Man, we have a points race for those final 2 spots left in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are counting Jimmie Johnson out. I'm not. Jimmie Johnson's had good speed the last few weeks. If he can have a good first 2 stages, put some pressure on Suarez, Boyer, Newman, we could have a fight. And, we mentioned how it's going to be a different kind of race here. They've never raced with this package here. Right. So coming here with all the pressure, those points on top of those guys, it's going to be really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what kind of risks these guys are willing to take with the strategy on pit road, whether they'll try to put themselves up front with old tires. It's going to be very fun to see them guys, what they're willing to do on pit road, on the racetrack. And you got to think, too, even beyond Jimmie Johnson, any of those guys back there can win this race and lock themselves in.
And Jeff brought up a very good point there. That might be a points path for Jimmie Johnson through to the playoffs as well. Kelly Stavis joins us. She's in the garage area. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Marty. Yeah, well, it truly doesn't get any closer than that race for that 16th and final spot. Right now, Ryan Newman and Daniel Suarez in a dead heat. Ryan Newman on the outside by way of a tiebreaker. So I was just catching up with him before he climbed inside the car for this first practice. And I said, hey, are you really not sweating this whole thing? And he said, what is there to sweat? I feel like we have the same chances, same opportunity today as we did when we turned up to Daytona back in February. And we heard him say after the race last week at Darlington, hey, he's used to this pressure. He's been to Homestead where there was one race on the line to win the championship. So Ryan, for one, certainly not letting it get to him. As for the plan for practice, I talked to Scott Graves, Ryan's crew chief. He said they're going to spend this entire practice in race trim, and they would like to get out there and get near some other cars to see how their car is going to handle in a little bit of a pack. He said, I don't know if we'll be in a full pack, but at least around other cars, try to work on that balance. And then maybe final practice is when they'll get into qualifying trim.
Thank you, Kelly. And Jeff, I had an interesting conversation with Scott Graves this morning, and he told me we're taking a much different approach. He said we really started it at Michigan with this new package. And he said if you look at our finishes this year, we honestly were very conservative. A lot of times playing defense. We stacked downforce on our car, and we didn't get stage points, but we finished well. They're coming with a different philosophy this weekend, trying to trim the car out a little bit more because he feels like those stage points are way too important to pass up for the 16 this weekend.
Yeah, they are too important. You can't give them up. And it'll be interesting to see. Junior mentioned it. What will people do on pit road? What will they do on the racetrack? That all started, with a mindset coming into this racetrack. And you cannot, as close as points are for these guys, you can't give points up. You have to decide what you're willing to give up to get those points. Your track position, all those kind of things. It's going to put these crew chiefs in very interesting situations.
Meanwhile, Jimmie Johnson's going to be the story of the weekend, Junior, and his streak of being in the playoffs is incredible. If he does not make it, it'd be the first time ever that he does not make it into the playoffs. And you look at that, 18th right now in the championship standings, minus 18 points below the cut line. And he's the only guy to make the playoffs every year. And it's pretty incredible what they've been able to do. And he enters the final race, obviously not locked in for the 2nd straight year. So they were in this position last year, Junior, and obviously has had success here as well. But the pressure the 48 team is under. Are they used to this kind of pressure with a brand new leader in Cliff Daniels?
Yeah, I think this is, it's not a great situation to be in for Jimmie, but he's been in tougher situations trying to win championships, going to Homestead in that final race, and that's pressure. This is a little bit different kind, maybe not as much. I mean, if he missed the playoffs, he'll be disappointed, but he doesn't look at this as the steepest hill he's ever had to climb. I think he's coming in here with confidence. He's probably, if you watch him on social media, he's pumping up his team. He's saying they're still in this, they're coming to fight. So I like the attitude. It just depends on whether that'll transition into a great result on the racetrack. They're going to have to work hard, and it starts right now with this practice.
They've been bringing some speed to the racetrack, but they just have not clawed out the finishes they needed to. Started in Michigan early in the race. This is a mistake you don't expect to see Jimmie Johnson make. Just contacted the wall, and then Jimmie Johnson again, wrong place, wrong time. Got a crash at Bristol. Then last week at Darlington, a really good run going. They wrecked in front of him, and nothing he could do. So some of these problems have been self-inflicted. Some of them have just been wrong place, wrong time. In talking to Jimmie, what I found fascinating in talking to Jimmie last week at Darlington is that obviously he wants to make the playoffs, right? I mean, clearly he wants to make the playoffs. But what he's more concerned about is the forward momentum of this team. Moving into next year, moving through the rest of this year, making sure they're doing the things they need to do so they don't have this issue next year, where they come out of the gate next year running the way they want to run. So he wants to make the playoffs, but that really is their focus in making the crew chief change, making the changes on the team to try to get this team back to where they're accustomed to being.
The one thing I hang my hat on if I'm Jimmie Johnson and Cliff Daniels is that you saw that wreck at Darlington, guys. They were running fourth when that happened. I mean, he had legit speed last week to finish top 5 easy.
Yeah, they've been improving since they made that crew chief change. You see the results and the speed in the car improve. Ooh, way out of the gas there. Got down into turn 1 and probably got down on the splitter.
I might come to you guys. I didn't hit the wall, but damn close.
Woo. Yeah, he got very, very tight down into turn 1. That, to me, has always been the tightest corner. Each corner, as you go around the racetrack, seems to be freer as the car rotates a little better as you go through the corners. Turn 1, very tight. Looks like he might have got on the splitter and pushed. Great save. Doesn't look like a save because you don't. Well, it doesn't look like a save because you don't see the back of the car move around. But sometimes that front takes off.
We heard Jimmie say, I either hit the wall or I came close to it.
Well, there he is on the very bottom of the racetrack where he needs to be and just lost the car and way up the racetrack. And that's just, this racetrack is known for one groove. Like, it's really hard when you get out of that groove not to hit the wall. And, Junior, you just mentioned it. Turn 1, it has less grip than turn 3. That 1 and 2 end of the racetrack has less grip than the 3 and 4 end of the racetrack. It always has. And with this package, right? We talked about it. How hard can I drive this car?
Yeah.
What am I going to have to do? Can I run wide open in there? Can I not? They're going to have to be figuring this out.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, even for a 7-time champ, if that's a little unnerving first lap on the track, that happens. Here's what Jimmie said on the radio a moment ago.
Yeah, it's got that little porpoise to it or a hop that I had in Michigan. And when it was doing that, I bailed on the throttle and laid on the splitter and went right at the wall.
Yeah, so the porpoise, he's talking about the front sort of bouncing as he goes down in the corner, the front sort of hopping. So he came out of the gas thinking that he was going to get tight, lose front grip. That set the car down on the splitter, and then it's like a snow ski. It's just going to go straight. Without it, the wheel input's not going to do a lot for you there. They're really not on the racetrack. The splitter's on the racetrack, and probably and he's not overstating it. He really did come very close to hitting the wall. Right, he's not. It doesn't look like this crazy moment inside the car. It's amazing and very scary. So, and that is disappointing. Like, he wants to hit the ground running. Now he's seeing that they've got some issues. They've got to work on the front of the car. They got, how are they going to fix that porpoising, make the car more comfortable? The nerves start to set in now. The anxiety starts to build.
You see top of your screen, the fastest right now. Ryan Newman tied with Daniel Suarez.
Yeah, that's a computer mistake at the moment. It shows the man a 6-second lap.
Well,
1,383 mile an hour. He said they're going to do something different this week.
1,000 miles an hour. That is a computer glitch.
That's not Newman's style. He's very steady and methodical.
All right, let's talk about the case for Daniel Suarez. So if you're the 41 team, are you just racing Ryan Newman this weekend? Is that the only thing you're focused on?
No, I don't. I think that's a huge mistake. I think that it's more difficult than that. I think they're going to have to race all 4 of those guys, all 3 of those other guys, just because you don't know what's going to happen. what if some odd winner happens? What if you get a fuel mileage race? What if you get a crazy last restart late in the race? I think they have to focus on those other 3 guys, but you can't count Jimmie Johnson out. You've got to just go get as many points as you can get.
And we go back to last week at Darlington. A little bit of controversy between these 2 guys, and you got to wonder whether this might carry over not only this weekend, but going forward. If one of these guys makes it and the other doesn't, if Newman doesn't make the playoffs, he can make it hard on Suarez, should Suarez get into the playoffs.
Sure.
He's got 10, 11 weeks to do it, to make it a difficult time for him.
Well, last week, I don't think he hit him. I mean, there was no they were very close, but I don't think there was contact. There was no damage on either car.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know how Ryan Newman can look at that and say he wrecked me. I don't think there was ever contact.
Well, so I had his pits last week, and the team told him the 41 made contact with you. So in his mind, whether that physically happened or not, that's what he was told.
Well, listen, I would go back. I'd be going back and watching a replay to understand it, but Ryan Newman said he never watched a replay with he and Matt Dibenedetto from Bristol. So if you're not going to go back and watch that replay, then you're probably not going to watch this one, and you've already made your mind up.
But I disagree. I feel like when I watch the replay, it looks like the 41 drove through the 6. In my mind as a driver, I think the 41 if I'm in the 6 car, the 41 did me no favors. He put me in some space. He put me in a bad situation. If he didn't hit me, he was going to hit me. If I didn't spin out, he was going to drive through me. So there it is.
There's no contact.
6 is loose.
There's no contact.
I think the contact is right there.
There's no damage. There's no scratch on either car. There's not a scratch on either car. Not a scratch.
You can get down there and see some damage.
You 2 disagreeing is funny up here.
Look, there's nothing on the cars. They never touched.
Yeah.
They never touched.
So in Ryan's mind, when he was told that, he said the 41 made contact with you, Ryan said, that's all I needed to know. What comes around goes around.
Hey, you know what it is? It's racing.
Yeah.
Right? That's you got 2 guys going at it in points. They're close together at Darlington, right? And it's racing. You're going to have that, and that's what this sport's always been about. And let's hope that's what it continues to be about.
And let's go back a few years when Ryan Newman was willing to move Kyle Larson to make it to the championship 4. So he's not above that. Right now, fastest Kurt Busch here at Indy. Monster Energy, unleash the beast. Fantastic day here in Indianapolis. First Cup Series practice underway, and this guy Kyle Larson locked himself into the playoffs last week with a good finish at Darlington and getting a caution on the racetrack for debris in turn 2. So Larson will pull it into the garage area. But talking about the 42 team, Jeff, man, they have really turned around things. I mean, in the early part of the year, they wrecked so many race cars. I think Chad Johnson told me they wrecked like 17 race cars this year between practice and then the race as well. But you see the turnaround there in the last few weeks.
Yeah, the 5 straight top 10s. That's been key. You know, they were in that conversation about not making the playoffs. Some consistency got them ahead of that conversation. With a good pit stop last week, that might have been your race winner right there. That was a untimely, not a good stop late in the race.
I think another thing that's helped this team is the addition of Kurt Busch in the program this year.
Yeah. Absolutely.
If, you know, the one car didn't perform well last year, when you have a teammate that's outperforming you, it really pushes you. It pushes the driver, the crew chief, the entire team to work harder, get better, because you can see, hey, that's the same equipment. It's out there beating us. Without that rabbit in front of them this year, I don't know if they rebound. Maybe they don't rebound and make the playoffs. So I think that combination of bringing Kurt Busch on, along with the talent behind the wheel of that 42 car, has really improved this team throughout the season.
As crew chief Chad Johnson told me that Kurt's really helped Kyle kind of understand better feedback with the car, and that's made them better as a team. So we mentioned a couple of years ago, Ryan Newman, what he was willing to do to make the championship for. This is it, Jeff.
Yeah.
Racing Kyle Larson at the end of the race here at Phoenix a couple of years ago.
Yeah, one to go. He's got to get himself, he's got to get this position, overdrives the entry, and just runs Kyle Larson out of the racetrack. I thought Kyle was going to have a shot at him, but just got up in the debris and took that spot away.
And Kyle wasn't very happy about it, but you know what? That's to make the championship for. Is that understandable, Jeff?
Well, Kyle understood it, but that didn't make it where he wasn't happy. Well, you know, he's still mad about it. You don't ever like getting just run over.
And using Kurov as a cushion to be able to get that one spot that he needed. So under caution here at Indianapolis. Getting geared for race day, check out the greatest selection of t-shirts, hats, die-casts, and more. For all your favorite drivers, visit NASCAR.com/shop for your gear today. I'm sure you can get Ryan Newman gear there and Jimmie Johnson gear as we ride on board with those guys. And getting kind of racy out here, isn't it, Jeff? With a lot of packs out on the racetrack right now.
It's fun to see Newman's workload's pretty high in that race car.
And you heard him lift just a little bit. There's another lift. Oh, he's chasing the back of that car big time through turn 3 and 4. We would expect that would be the corner, if any of them, where you might run wide open, but not comfortable there. They need to definitely work on the balance of that car so you can carry more throttle through that corner.
Major.
He's going to lift and come on in.
Yeah, it's a major give and take here for the team. So you really want to get that car trimmed out. You want to get that car on the ground, get as much downforce of it off of it as you can so you can go down these long straightaways, but you get too much off of it, then the driver cannot drive it as hard as he wants to. Just a major balance, trying to figure out what's enough and what's too much downforce.
And this is when you find out in that first practice session, you got to get those travels right. Sometimes that means you'll drag the splitter around the racetrack.
It's still too loose.
It's too loose. Yeah, I'd say got to get that car locked down into the racetrack a little better than that.
As we mentioned, getting a little racy. There's Martin Truex Jr. Logano's been following him for a while, Jeff, and you mentioned drivers being able to stay wide open. Did you ever imagine a day when you were driving that you could run wide open around this place in a stock car?
I didn't, but we've yet to be able to see a driver do it. The driver, we saw Jimmie Johnson try it and almost wrecked. We saw right there Ryan Newman trying it and he almost wrecked. So it's not easy to get your car to do that, clearly.
We talked about that first practice session being a time where you kind of find those things out, Jeff, and here's some evidence of teams finding out how low you can go with a car.
You can see right here, Alex Bowman's car, the front of his car, it's on the splitter, it's on the left front fender, just trying to keep that nose sealed off. Then as we look at some other cars, here's a 43 car, the back of the car hitting the racetrack. Some just different thought processes. And then right here, 27 Quinn House, the back of his car just eating the racetrack up, and that's what we talked about. That's how the teams are trying to at the racetrack. Now, there's been some things they've done to the car before it gets here, but how the car sits on the racetrack, that's their big tuning opportunity to get it trimmed out, to get the right downforce put into the car once they've gotten here.
I find it interesting, see the left side of your screen, we talked about Jimmie Johnson, sort of an unnerving moment, first run of the day, and look at that, second run of the day, fastest so far here at Indy. That shows you a 7-time champ.
This track, I think, is is a real challenging track for the crew chiefs to figure out how much downforce, drag, and all that to have in the car, because it's a big track, long straightaways. You need that fast speed down those straightaways, but you've got flat corners where balance and handling is going to be a premium. So having the car handle well, yet go down the straightaways and not have a lot of drag, is going to be critical today, Kelly.
That's exactly what Chase Elliott's crew chief, Alan Gustafson, told me this morning. He said he was worried that they'd just be able to go out there and run flat and then trim it out too much and be miserable in the race. But I can tell you that to start off this day, at least, Chase Elliott is among those drivers not been able to run it flat. He's had to get off the throttle a number of times. And this track in particular has not been particularly great for Chase, and Gustafson is super anxious for them to run well here. He's run well here as a crew chief with his drivers in the past, and he said he just loves this place. And so it's important to him to come to the Brickyard. And of course, this team was already well locked into the playoffs on their 2 wins, but they also want to make sure they continue to have a little momentum on their side as they get to Las Vegas next week.
To Kelly's point, it may not be the best racetrack for Chase Elliott, but for Hendrick Motorsports, it's been a fantastic place. Obviously, Jeff Gordon with the inaugural win here. 10 wins for Hendrick Motorsports at Indianapolis. Certainly a place they've had success. 5 poles as well, including Mark Martin back in the day. And look at all those top 5 finishes, most all time here at Indianapolis. And laps led as well. Casey Kane got the big win just a couple of years ago here in 2017. So, Junior, you drove for Hendrick Motorsports. A big point of emphasis to run well here at the Brickyard?
Yeah, they wanted to win all the races, but they wanted to win the big ones for sure. And I think from an ownership standpoint, for Mr. Rick Hendrick, it was very key to be able to showcase your ability here for the sponsors. This is a big ticket item. when it comes to sponsorship. So anytime a big sponsor like Napa can be on the hood and the quarter panels of the winning race car, that's a win for their season, just like winning the Daytona 500.
The leaderboard changing quick. Now the fastest. Last year's Brickyard 400 winner, Brad Keselowski here at Indianapolis. Welcome back to Indianapolis. It's Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series practice, the first practice of the weekend. Team's getting a feel for the Brickyard and the new 2019 package. For Brad Keselowski, he had a pretty good feel last year, Jeff, didn't he? And a phenomenal final restart here. And it usually comes down to late restarts, doesn't it? But look at this battle with Denny Hamlin. He had to fight to get the lead in the last few laps.
It was a great battle. These two just went at it. Kind of a boxing match the last few laps. And amazingly enough, that was Roger Penske's first win here in a Cup car. Obviously, the history in Indy cars has been remarkable here, but first opportunity to win a race here in a Cup car.
How about Team Penske at Indianapolis? 18 pole positions, 18 wins in the Indy 500, including Simon Pagenaud this year. And for the last 2 years, they have swept the month of May here at Indianapolis. And as you mentioned, Brad Keselowski won the Xfinity Series race and then backed it up with a Cup Series win here in 2018. And when you walk in Team Penske, there's the iconic shot, Junior. I don't know if you've ever walked through the front door or not, with Roger Penske and all those Borg Warner trophies down the table. That's a pretty amazing sight, isn't it? 18 times they've won this Indianapolis 500.
Yeah, pretty incredible. On the other side of that conversation, Denny Hamlin, he characterized that race last year as maybe his biggest disappointment. He's having a great year this year, and you got to think about how hungry he may be coming to this race to try to get that win, because he feels like he can win anywhere this year, the success they've had.
And Junior, coming here knowing you're locked into playoffs, right? I remember you and I racing at Richmond when that was the cutoff race. We were both in, and we had a hell of a race. Like, we went at it like nothing mattered. And because it didn't. I mean, all we were doing was racing to maybe earn some points. We didn't have that situation that he had today, but you come here with, it's just a different feel, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you come here with nothing to lose, and it's just an amazing opportunity to go make something cool happen.
Yeah. We focus on the guys that are around that bubble, but here's a guy, Matt Dibenedetto, who I think is a sneaky Cinderella pick this weekend. He's got a great crew chief, willing to take some gambles in Wheeler on that pit box, and he's been great at the last couple of races now. He had some great road course runs this year, but he's ran in the top 10 in the last two ovals at Darlington and Bristol. So this is a team that's turning the corner right at the right time. He's got speed out there in the top 15 in practice, and I really think that they got, they can throw a Hail Mary here. and potentially get into this playoffs.
Well, you talk about Denny Hamlin's success here. Who is leading him? Mike Wheeler.
Right.
Now the crew chief for Matty D. And if just imagine a surprise winner, Jeff, this weekend. Paul Menard's done it here, won in 2012.
Right.
Casey Kane didn't expect that in 2017. It could happen for Matty D this weekend.
That's why Daniel Suarez can't just focus on one driver. You know, those guys on that bubble, you got to assume that Matty D, you're going to have a surprise winner. You have to assume that when you're, taking all this in. Now, when you get late in the race and nobody's in position, you can maybe switch gears, but going into it, you gotta assume that somebody's going to win. And I called incorrectly. Quinn Houff driving his 27 car. Actually, Ryan Sieg is driving it, his first start of the year. He's a guy that's got that last bubble spot locked in the Xfinity Series. A really good race car driver. Good to see Ryan Sieg here at the Brickyard this weekend. His first start of the year in the Cup Series.
Couple of races left for the Xfinity Series in the regular season. But how about this young man, Eric Jones? Big announcement yesterday, Joe Gibbs Racing saying, hey, he's signed. We're going to extend that contract through 2020. And it wasn't because he won the Southern 500, Jeff. A big win for him, but Joe Gibbs Racing signing what they believe is going to be a star for the future.
Yeah, this was a really good race. He took the fight right to him. This battle between he and Kyle Larson trading the lead back and forth was awesome. And then the charge from behind with Kyle Busch, he was coming at him. Eric Jones had to be at his best to get this win.
He's a runner-up here last year. He's been on a hot tear here recently with great consistency. I think Joe Gibbs has learned about, maybe hanging on to these guys a little bit longer. I think they learned from the Logano experience, letting him get out of the fold, get out of the company, and going over to Penske and having the success that he's had there. You got to give these guys a little more time to mature and develop. And we're looking at a guy that I think if he stays at Gibbs over the next 10 years, will be the guy winning races for that organization and possibly contending for many more championships over those years. So you got to look at the drivers that are on the verge of retiring or looking to retire over the next 5 years. Guys like Jones are going to take their place, right? He's in an amazing position to be a contender for the next decade.
No doubt a lot of talent at Joe Gibbs Racing. Kelly's hanging out with one of the JGR teams right now.
Yeah, his teammate Denny Hamlin, of course, last week at Darlington, that snapped a 6-race run of top 5 finishes for Denny. All right, count him among the drivers that went out and said he was bouncing really badly off the splitter. And then after his second run, he told the team this.
I need a little grip. I feel like, man, we're going to be getting out of the gas a lot. Just, it's a little lazy turning down in. It's not tight. And I get down there and I feel like the nose gets down and it bites good. And I kind of get a little free. And then I get a little floaty on the exit, the late exit.
All right, so Denny Hamlin still third fastest on the timesheet. Remember what JGR can accomplish with a win here tomorrow, and that would be a sweep of all 4 Crown Jewel events in NASCAR.
Great information from Denny Hamlin. These teams don't know what to expect, and that we're going to be out of this gas a lot. That was information the teams did not know before they got here.
There's the Mobile One Peacock Pit Box. All the way at the head end of pit road, Steve Letart's going to be on there for Xfinity Series qualifying with Dave Burns and Dale Jarrett. That's coming up here after Cup Series practice just in a few minutes, actually. 18 minutes or so. Hey, tomorrow night, Tom Brady and the defending Super Bowl champs, Patriots and the Steelers. Sunday Night Football. I'm so glad Steve's not up here for this promo because we would hear nonstop about how great the Patriots are.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Kind of gets old.
A lot of people excited about this weekend. Everybody's drafted their fantasy teams.
Oh, yeah.
They made the right choices. I know I'm one of them.
Who do your Redskins play this weekend?
They play Philadelphia. It'll be a tough game to win, but you never know.
Bert, our Panthers, they get the Rams at home, you know.
It's a hard way to start.
You think the Panthers are going to lose? I think they're going to win. So maybe we should wager like some water on that or something.
Yeah.
You know?
And one thing we know for sure is that I'm a Steelers fan. And Sunday Night Football, I'll be playing the Steelers.
Oh, you will be.
Yes.
News for me. Hey, how about the case for Clint Boyer this weekend? Coming to pit road, of course, in the garage area right now. You could argue, Jeff, if they just get a top 10 this weekend, they're okay. They have that little bit of cushion with 8 points. Do you buy into that?
You got to get stage points.
Yeah.
Like a top 10 with guys that finished fifth in the first two stages doesn't do it, right? So I don't think it's as easy in today's world. Like I think we make a mistake. Like we historically look at top 5s and top 10s. In today's world, like it's points gathered, right?
Yeah.
That's really what matters.
We watched last week, and I think that made him a little bit nervous when Jimmie went out there and got those stage points in the first stage at Darlington. And talking to Brett Griffin, the spotter for the 14 car, they were very adamant and concerned that they got stage points in that second stage, and they actually beat Jimmie by a position. So that's where their mind is, right? Is to go out there and beat Jimmie each stage, right? Jimmie and the other drivers that they're also racing around that bubble, they want to be ahead of them each stage. So yeah, I think they're focusing on stage points. He finished 5th here last year, so you got the confidence of coming in here knowing you can run well, but also they're going to be watching what those other guys are doing, the strategy that they think the 48 team, the 41 team and so forth are doing, and try to counter that and not allow them to outpoint them before the race is over.
And they're working on that strategy now. This is all about getting on pit road, green flag pit stops. You can expect to see green flag pit stops here on Sunday. There's no doubt you'll see them unless we get just a rash of cautions, but that's what they're doing right now. He's been down pit road twice, making sure he can get on pit road well, making sure his pit road speed is good. Matters a great deal here. So that you've seen every team working on this.
So, Jeff, you said they had to get stage points. Look who's done the best of the bubble drivers right now. Clint Boyer, 99 stage points. And, Junior, a lot of people forget he started on the front row. 3 laps to go. Final restart here last year with a shot to win this race.
Yeah, that's the one thing I see there is they all sort of vary in how many stage points they got. So that's not exactly critical to getting themselves into the playoffs.
Yep.
Where they finish in the race is equally as important. And one guy that's extremely steady, not only throughout the season, but at this racetrack, Ryan Newman. That's the one guy that bothers me. You know, you don't look at,
Bothers you how?
Well, you look at the 14, the 48, and you think about, man, those guys they compete and can contend for wins. We haven't really seen Ryan do that, but man, is he consistent. Gosh, he's so consistent that you just know that 6 car is going to find a way to finish 6th through 10th. So it really puts you in a corner.
But to that point that Scott Graves was making to me this morning, you saw how few stage points they have. They feel like they have to go after that this weekend and get those stage points if they want to advance to the playoffs.
I agree with that. They don't have the speed, I think, to get the stage points. They don't have the speed to qualify well enough and get that they finish well enough that first. So and you see that in the numbers. He is going to go out there and try to get that top 10 or top 5 even finish in this race. I think that they don't go for stage points. I don't know if they'll qualify well enough to even have that idea going into stage 1.
That's why they brought a different car this weekend.
Yeah, we'll see.
With a little less downforce and a little more trimmed out.
That's another thing, too, is where these guys qualify, I think, determines their strategy in stage 1 as well.
Kelly has a little more on Ryan Newman.
Yeah, the word that Scott Graves used with me was aggressive. They've got to be aggressively going after points, but that was even true for the last couple weeks for this 6 team. All right, so I told you at the start of this practice they were going to be in race trim throughout this session, and here's what Ryan said just before, I should say the last time he was out on track.
Change reverse springs, do something, it's not right. None of that was any better. if not worse.
All right, so Ryan, obviously not very happy about what they had. They've made some changes now. We'll wait to hear feedback from him now. And I asked him ahead of this practice, I said, look, if you make the playoffs, don't you think that's exceeding a lot of people's expectations for this team? And he said, yeah, probably, but doesn't exceed my own expectations. So, you know, this guy is a competitor, certainly a competitor at heart, and he always intended to be a part of this postseason when he made the switch to the team.
Yeah, we talked about qualifying for Newman, only one top 10 start this year. And in the in-car with his hands, boy, did he look nervous. I mean, he's a lot of movement in the hands and very fast, quick, high-intensity high-frequency movement in the hand tells me that the car is not comfortable in the back end. He's really nervous about that right rear.
He talked about he's been in this situation before. He has the experience of going to Homestead. But perhaps more importantly, that year that he went to Homestead with a chance to win a championship, how they got there, right? Restarts, great restarts, whole track position. That's what put him in that position.
There's your top 10 speeds. Keselowski fastest. Logano's jumped into the top 10. Back at Indianapolis, Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series first practice of the weekend for the Brickyard 400 underway right now. Ryan Newman back in the garage area and had an eventful last run, Junior.
Yeah, watch this right here. This is a car coming through turn 3 and 4. There were 2 moments inside this car. You don't even notice the first one. You see a little bit of a bobble right there. Doesn't look like a big deal, right? But watch his hands, okay? This is through turn 3, coming into 4. There's a moment entering we don't even see from visually outside the car. Watch this. Wow, big moment right there. Chasing the back of the car, and then again here on corner exit. That's a huge, huge issue inside the car. Just really worried about the back end of that car, and he's telling his guys to change the rear spring. He's got to work on it. He's panicking. You know, you can hear the anxiety and the nervousness.
You think so?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's not torpedoing the weekend, but he's getting really nervous
getting a little worried.
There's a limited practice. It's Saturday. This is a 2-day show. He's got another practice coming up, and he's dying to know whether they're going to get the balance of this car comfortable, because he knows he has to be aggressive and he has to try to work his way into the playoffs. This is it.
2-day show, Jeff. How does that affect the drivers and the teams? It does compact everything. Does it add to the anxiety if you're on the bubble?
Yes, it adds. If things aren't going well, it adds to the anxiety because there's less time to recover. If you were here yesterday running in practice, you would have identified problems. You and your team, engineers would have sat down. They would have had a plan coming into today. You don't get that chance. You got to work on it right now in between these practices, during practices. It creates such a level of intensity. It's way more difficult. Now, listen, when you're running well, it's easier because you have less time to think about it. You're right, but when you're running poorly, it makes it that much more difficult.
And meanwhile, look at the top of your screen. Again, the fastest, Jimmie Johnson, who's crept up again onto the top of the charts. So for that race team, they've certainly got things figured out, and having a little chat there with this group. Look who's in the foreground right there, Mr. Jeff Gordon. He knows a thing or two about winning at this racetrack, doesn't he, guys?
I would say. There's a thing or two about winning everywhere.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah. But certainly an important racetrack to him.
Pretty sure that was a qualifying run that they made.
It was.
I don't know that they're very happy with that lap. At 49.26 by themselves in Q trim. I don't know. Like, I don't see a whole lot of other people that have made Q laps. I don't really know if that's a good lap yet or not.
Meanwhile, this guy's pretty good here, just in. Kyle Busch, good at Indianapolis, won 2 of the last 4 races here. And we talk about JGR maybe winning all of the crown jewels. They could do it, Junior, with 4 different drivers. Wouldn't that be amazing? I mean, Kyle Busch is the one who hasn't won a crown jewel race this year. Denny Hamlin, the Daytona 500. Martin Truex Jr., the Coca-Cola 600. And last week, Eric Jones, Southern 500.
And one thing that we're seeing Kyle experience for maybe the first time in his career is not being the peak driver, the top driver of that team consistently throughout the season. And he's talked about that a little bit when Truex was winning races. He's like, now I might get beat by my teammate. Now I got to figure out how to go out there and reestablish ourselves as the dominant team. And then Denny Hamlin comes along and wins a string of races, and now last week Jones has won a race. So the 18, not only, I mean, they're confident, but they want to establish themselves as not only the best driver of the series, but in Joe Gibbs Racing as well. He wants to win this championship. He doesn't want to lose it to anyone, especially a teammate.
Well, one thing we have learned today is these cars are not going to be easy to drive, and Kyle Busch coming off turn 3, you said,
look
3
at
inch
that.
of the racetrack. And that, listen, that's Indy. I mean, you're going to see that at Indy. You're going to have to use all the racetrack. You're always pushing just as hard as you can go all the time, and we're going to see those all throughout the day. But I think we're going to see cars closer together for this Indy race than we've seen in the past. And if you get up the racetrack that much and race tomorrow, you could get lined up on and lose 2 or 3 spots.
Well, certainly fun to be here at the racetrack, but we're certainly all thinking of those affected by Hurricane Dorian. Everyone in Florida, Georgia, and came through South Carolina, Jeff, and North Carolina as well. If you want to help out, check out the redcross.org and text Dorian to 90999, and you'll donate $10 and help those people who need it so desperately right now.
A lot of people this hurricane has affected, and their life is not good at the moment. If you can help, it would be appreciated.
Certainly would.
We're going to go down the strip, do some burnouts. You can do it. Just put her in first and pin it. Good luck. Okay. Is there room for one more?
Yes, get in.
All right, great. I'll get in the back. Go get him, Harv. Is this how you imagined your Burnout Boulevard experience to go, Kyle?
At some point, yes, because I figured our show car would blow up.
Here we go. It's like a tug of war.
That was a Ford versus Chevy battle. Hey, style points, though.
Creativity. It's a solid 10.
Yes, it is.
Oh, man.
Tires come apart.
Do not tear your car up. Whatever you do, go have fun, do a burnout, put on a show, but don't tear your car up. He tore the hell out of it.
Cannot wait for next Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. You don't want to miss it. The Strip becomes Burnout Boulevard. You can join Kelly Stavis, Steve Letarte, and Dale Jr. Be there hanging out. That's going to be fun, isn't it, Junior?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I didn't get to do the show last year, so.
Parker gets to drive your car, Jeff. Is he allowed to do burnouts, or are you shutting that down?
He is not allowed to do burnouts. But the only reason he's not allowed is they didn't let me do them last year.
Oh,
that's the only reason. It's not because it wouldn't be in his capable hands.
Yes.
It's that I don't want him to have more fun than I did.
Understand. We got some racing going on here, guys.
Yeah, we do. We got some racing going on. Kelly down in the garage told us a couple guys are taping off to go out for qualifying runs. And Jeff, you were right. I don't know that Jimmy's going to be very happy with the lap that they put down, a 49.26, because Kurt Busch went out there and ran a 48.71. Keselowski just put a 48.75 on the board. Chase Elliott, Jimmy's teammate, at a 48.83. So there's a good standard for what you might expect guys to be running out there now. Larson just went to the top of the board at a 48.64. So yeah, Jimmie Johnson, those guys may not have the speed that they were hoping for so far, as at least running by themselves.
Yeah, talk about running by themselves and qualifying. This right here, this group of cars running together, this is what I expect to see all day on Sunday. I expect to see cars much closer together than what we've had here in the past. And so this time on the racetrack is valuable. You know, what do I need to do with my car? How does my car need to drive? Where do I get a draft? Does it help me at all? All those questions are being answered right now. It will be different when we get all the cars on the racetrack, but there's so much valuable information being gained right now. You see the 8 of Daniel Hemrick actually got behind the 24 because he wanted to see what his car does behind him rather than just being in front of him.
Yeah.
He just about found the turn 3 wall right there.
You're looking for a guy who's got a real opportunity to win in the pole today. William Byron, if he wins this pole tomorrow morning, he will have won all 4 poles for the Crown Jewels this year in 2019. It's been tough to predict pole winners this year with this new rule.
I mean, Toyota went to Bristol was their first pole of the year. Who would have thought that?
Remember here, are we seeing the old traditional, man, you better get the good draw at Darlington, being that the qualifying time is when it is? I sat on the pole here one time, and a lot of it had to do with when we went out.
Yeah,
you went out early.
Yeah, you went out like the first 3 cars, right?
It was awesome. And the track was way cooler. I actually sat on the pole, and I was at ORP practicing an Xfinity car.
Yeah.
And my wife, the tracks are so close together, my wife was listening to the radio, not to her team radio, listening to them call out times, and I'm in the car during practice, and she's like, hey, you got on a pole. That's how I knew it.
Red and black flags out, signifying the first practice for the Brickyard 400 is over with. Kyle Larson, as you mentioned a moment ago, junior fastest. But boy, the one thing that jumps out at me, man, Jimmie Johnson, 6/10 off on a Q run. That's the one thing that really stood out from that practice session.
How about Bubba Wallace? They just taped up and made a Q run, and he went 5th fastest, ahead of Bowman, ahead of Boyer, ahead of Blaney. Some really good cars. He went faster than. That's a good run for that team.
Yeah, Boyer just put in that lap a moment ago. So an interesting practice session here from Indianapolis, guys. What'd you learn?
Well, I think we're learning that some guys are trimmed out more than others. That's going to mean that some guys are going to handle better than others in the race. So who's fast today and who's fast in qualifying tomorrow may not be who has the best car in the race, who has the best comfortable handling car and can make passes as we go through the run.
We definitely learned it's not going to be easy, right? We come in here, a lot of people thought, well, with this package, they'll run around here wide open. Yeah, it's not easy, not at all. We saw a lot of drivers really with their hands full. I'm so excited about this race. I can't wait to see today's Xfinity race. We'll get a glimpse of what this Cup race is going to look like, but I just think the quality of race is going to be so much better than what we've seen here in the last several years.
Will it, though, Junior, be pack racing? I don't think it's going to be like Daytona and Talladega, but it should be a much more bunched up field.
Yeah, I expect the guys, the race from probably 5th on back in the field could be very compelling. A lot of guys we saw it already in practice, guys having to get out of the gas, guys making mistakes, misjudging the entry to turn 1 and the entry speed, thinking they can run more throttle. Well, we're going to see guys having to get out of the gas, get in dirty air and so forth. That's going to create passing opportunities for the others behind them.
Yeah, and then the stack up that creates, the loss of momentum, the 3 wide getting into turn 1 and getting into turn 3, as you lose momentum on, heading to those long straightaways. We won't see pack racing, but we are going to see cars closer together than what we're accustomed to seeing.
And we'll be talking about those bubble drivers, including Daniel Suarez, obviously. Hey, we just gotten the day started here. There's the Mobile One Peacock Pit Box, and Stevie's up there, Steve Letarte, for Xfinity Series qualifying. Hey, Steve, we saw you wave there. He's going to join Dave Burns and also Dale Jarrett, and then Racing Roots with Denny Hamlin. Cup Series final practice. We're going to do it radio style, Junior. You're going to be over in turn 3, and you're going to be in turn 2, right, Burton? Parker.
Yeah.
Parker.
Yeah,
You're going to be there for the Cup race.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
I'll be over there in this final Cup practice.
You're going to be on the Mobile One Peacock Pit Box for the final, for the race.
We're everywhere.
Yeah. Right now, Brad Keselowski had a good practice session, but the fastest here at Indy was Kyle Larson in the first practice.